Jacinda Ardern's long been hailed as a darling of the liberal left. But those of us on the other side of the fence detected a steely and manic duplicity in her from the outset. And as she's increasingly unsheathed her claws, her critics have come to realise that they were right all along. Her sycophantic supporters will never admit this, of course. They'd rather carry on being wrong than ever admit that they were wrong, preferring to dig ever deeper into a muddy hole than simply step out into the sunshine. But Ardern's totalitarian bullying style has become simply undeniable. To all neutral observers, her constant fake grins can't hide the steel inside. Because it's not just the relentless authoritarian style of her government that's become ever more brazen. It's the quite obvious relish she takes in her ever more despotic diktats. She's not just a modern tyrant. She's a manic and obsessive one. A decidedly dangerous combination. The COVID restrictions rolled out in New Zealand were among the most stringent imposed anywhere on Earth. Ardern ordered vaccine mandates, virtually closed the country to the rest of the world, imposed punitive restrictions on the unvaccinated, and ordered extraordinarily lengthy periods of isolation. The authoritarian severity of her restrictions were appalling. And this was all imposed even while the government failed badly in its duty to guarantee an adequate supply of the vaccine. But as with all such states, the people were blamed for the failings of the government, and they were then punished accordingly. Ardern even seemed to crow about the death rate in other countries, not realising that New Zealand's low totals were aided as much by its thinly populated isolation as by her own draconian form of government. Yet this taste for totalitarianism is spreading through New Zealand like a rash. For now, she's introduced a smoking ban, a move simply destined to make smoking cool again. Everyone born after 2008 in New Zealand will be banned from smoking for life. It's a deliciously Hitlerian move, which I'm sure will pass her by. This is a horrific example of government overreach from a woman who's forgotten that she's an elected representative. She seems to believe that she's a parent, one entitled to interfere and dictate in every aspect of the population she lords it over, like some horse-faced Nurse Ratched, her grin twisting in an evil rictus, her eyes gleaming like those of a religious fanatic. But there's worse, because the sort of authoritarian bullying epitomised by Ardern is spreading to infect the whole country, even as New Zealand sinks ever deeper into a sort of noxious, woke soup. There's no greater example of this than the government decree that schools should give the same weight to Maori mythology that they do to modern science in the classroom. In Maori beliefs, all living things originated with Rangi and Papa, the Sky Mother and Sky God. Giving these theories parity with those of Newton and Darwin alarmed some in the education sector. But only some. 7 eminent scientists signed a letter which highlighted the importance of preserving Indigenous culture and of teaching it in the nation's schools, but drew the line at putting it on a par with empirical science. In a rational world, this letter would have won universal approval. But the world was conquered by a deranged cult a while back, you may have noticed, and New Zealand is now an epicentre, a petri dish of this madness that cult can inflict. So the authors of the letter were denounced by the Royal Society, the New Zealand Association of Scientists, and the Tertiary Education Union, as well as by their own Vice-Chancellor, Dawn Freshwater, who wailed about the hurt and dismay caused to students and alumni. A witch hunt swiftly ensued, and more than 7,000 academics signed an open letter condemning the scientists for standing up for science. Their lives and careers were reduced to tatters quicker than you could say, cancel culture isn't real. So this is the New Zealand Jacinda Ardern's presiding over. But what followed was arguably even worse. Our Jacinda issued a statement on the rising number of suicides in New Zealand. Being that suicides had risen during the period of lockdowns and draconian restrictions imposed by her government, it's reasonable to assume that the suicides may have been caused by her government. We need to at least be open to the possibility that this spike in suicides was her fault. But regardless, you'd expect her to deliver this news with due solemnity, to give this shattering coverage the respect and decorum it deserves. I mean, she couldn't possibly announce anything as grim as this while grinning and cackling like a baboon, right?
Sad facts for New Zealand is that everyone knows someone who has taken their own life. Now, we're a small country, less than 5 million people, but last year over 600 people committed suicide. And of course, that's only one marker of well-being. And you saw in the video reel that played 1 in 4 people in their lifetime will experience a mental health issue. And so for us, this is something that affects everyone, because either you have someone in your family who may be affected, a friend, or you yourself. And so they say in politics, you know, everything is personal, and for me the issue of mental health was deeply personal. I've lost friends, and I wouldn't have to look far in my cabinet to find others who have as well. So for us it's a moral issue. Equally, it's an economic issue as well. When you have so many people affected by mental health, of course that affects your productivity, and there's good reason why business should be taking this on, for both that moral imperative but that economic imperative as well. So for both reasons, it's a 5% loss to GDP, but also the moral reason, it's a real priority for us.
Horrifying, right? Well, that's our Jacinda. Now it seems, under public pressure and having lost a court case, she's begun rolling back some of her more authoritarian public health policies. Though she's acting like that's what she intended all along. But she's not fooling us. This horse-faced harbinger of the apocalypse is no friend of the people. She's a bullying, woke authoritarian. Her tenure should act as a warning. But then, all the darlings of the progressive left have been revealed as tyrants or disasters in recent years. If they'd paid any attention over the last century, the left would have seen all this coming a mile off. But of course, they never learn the lessons from history, no matter what their rhetoric to the contrary says. If you'd like to support this channel, please like, subscribe, and think about buying my books. They're called The Tyranny of the Left, and they're available on the links below. They go into topics like these in much greater detail. Please do think about picking them up and let me know what you think. Thank you.